Before we start, I just want you to listen. Don't write anything. Hitler. You probably know him as the evil dictator who killed millions of Jews just because they were Jews. Before that, Pearl Harbor. You probably know it as the place in Hawaii that was attacked by the Japanese. Both Hitler's Holocaust and Pearl Harbor took place in the 1940s during the most epic and disastrous of all wars, World War II. But we aren't quite there yet. We're going to back up to the late 1800s and the early 1900s. While America was industrializing, something different was happening in another part of the world. The makings of a dark, complex storm were brewing across the Atlantic in Europe. This storm was finally set into motion in 1914 when one man was assassinated. One man's murder put into motion a war that was just waiting to bloom, to explode. One man's murder released a war that needed a reason, a catalyst to come into fruition. One man. One man's death led to 4 harsh years of fighting. One man's death caused 15 countries to fight. One man's death led to 21 million wounded soldiers, and one man's death led to the burials of 19 million men, women, and children around the world. 4 years, one man, 19 million dead. Over the course of this week, we're going to learn about this war, World War I. Beginning in 1914, this war, World War I, was fought 2 years after the sinking of the Titanic and 6 years before women gained the right to vote in America. Now, before I go on, during this class, you are going to fill out your notes, which is this page right here, writing the descriptions of each word as you see on the screen during the presentation. I'm not going to stop you and tell you it's time to write. I will continue telling the story of World War I while you write, and I will tell enough while the slide is up to where you have enough time to write. So I suggest that before you start, get this in your head. You need to avoid interruptions, disruptions, and bathroom breaks. This includes your cell phone. What I'm going to tell you is a story of World War I. Not just facts, vocabulary terms piled together for you to copy down. It is a story for you to understand and follow. This war deserves your focus. The 21 million people who died deserve to know that their deaths were not in vain. They deserve to know that you, 100 years later, might actually learn a lesson from this, and you might be the generation to make sure another war like this never happens again. But to do that, you need to understand it. And to understand it, you need to respect it. We're first going to look at and analyze the causes of World War I. One of these causes is nationalism. So I want you to think about this. What are some holidays where people celebrate pride in their national heritage? You may be thinking July 4th, Independence Day in America, or May 5th, Cinco de Mayo in Mexico. What do both of these days have in common? Well, a certain group or race of people was coming together in a warlike fashion and winning a revolution. So for Independence Day, America defeated the British. For Cinco de Mayo, Mexico defeated the French. Both nations of people gained or kept their independence. Now, this drive to fight for the independence and freedom of a nation of similar peoples is what was happening in Europe before and during World War I. And that drive is called nationalism. That is one cause that we will come back to in a few minutes. Okay, here are your causes of World War I. A good acronym to remember this is MANIA, or mania, craziness. We will expand on the ideas in a second, but here are the basics. M is militarism. A is alliances. N is nationalism. I is imperialism. And A is assassination. The M stands for militarism, meaning to build up strong military forces to prepare for war. Before war was even in session, Germany, for example, had been adding to their arsenal of weapons. In addition, other countries have been putting a higher percentage of their budget towards their military programs. This table shows how much money each of the great powers was putting toward their national militaries and defense of their country. These great powers include Germany, Austria-Hungary, Italy, France, Britain, and Russia. The U.S. wouldn't be involved until later. So as you can see, between 1870 and 1914, a total of 44 years, the amount of money put towards defense quadrupled in these countries. And in this table, at the bottom, you see that between 1910 and 1914, which is actually just 4 years, Germany increased its defense spending more than France, Britain, and Russia combined. What this shows you is that Germany was preparing. Germany was ready for war. And so militarism is going to be a key factor in the start of World War I, because wars don't happen when countries are ill-prepared. A country will not declare war if it hasn't prepared the means to fight, the weapons, the bombs, the soldiers. Germany was clearly on a path to war more than the other countries in Europe. And you'll see this as an actual pattern through the end of not just World War I, but also into World War II as well. Hitler, when he became leader of Germany, he once again built up their military right before World War II. So you'll see these things happen again, sadly. Alright, in mania, the A stands for alliances, which are agreements between nations to aid and protect one another. For example, Germany and Austria-Hungary had made a pact that if one of them was attacked, then the other would have its back and fight with it. Germany and Austria-Hungary would join together as a team. Now, these alliances also went back to 1870 in the Franco-Prussian War. These alliances were like a house of cards. 6 cards to be exact. A house of cards only stands up if each card is perfect, and no card can stand alone. If one card falls or moves, the whole house falls down. And that's what happened in this situation in Europe. 6 cards. On these 6 cards were the names Great Britain, France, Russia, Germany, Austria-Hungary, Italy. The situation before 1914 was not war, but the lines between no war and massive war was thin. There was no gray area here. No area where only 2 countries might end up fighting each other. No. If Great Britain declared war on Germany, those 2 cards would come out of the house of cards, then the whole house would fall, and all the countries would be somehow brought into the war. It would take hours to tell you how these alliances came to be in history, but the basic turnout is that you have 2 cliques. Clique 1 is called the Triple Entente. It is made up of Great Britain, France, and Russia. Clique 2 is called the Triple Alliance, made up of Germany, Austria-Hungary, and Italy. About a dozen other countries were also in this, but these countries listed here, these are the quarterbacks, the point guards, the MVPs of these teams. One way to remember who was in the Triple Entente and who was in the Triple Alliance is this. Entente is a French word, and France is part of that team. So, when you put these two together, these two teams, there is going to be tension. And this with tension is just waiting to explode. Okay, on to our N in mania. The N stands for nationalism, which means pride or devotion to one's country, or more specifically to one's nation. So you get it? Nation. Nationalism. This is what I referenced a couple minutes ago with the holidays question. Nationalism is a drive to fight for the independence and the freedom of a nation of similar peoples. Now, let me show you how crazy Europe was at this time. There was a cornucopia of nationalities and languages that were spoken in Europe in 1914, which was the year the war started. I'm going to focus on Eastern Europe, and you'll be able to see how the problems came about. So this map right here is a map of Europe at the start of World War I in 1914. We are going to focus in on this country called Austria-Hungary, right there, which you probably never heard of it, but it's not going to exist by the time World War I is over. This is actually an empire. Now, this map here is a close-up of Austria-Hungary's ethnic groups around the same time. So this area here is just bigger right here. So this one country has 10 ethnic groups and 10 different languages spoken. The ideal situation for all these ethnic groups would be to have each their own country with their own borders and their own government. And if you look at a map of today's Europe, you can see that this actually did eventually happen, that each ethnic group eventually got their own country, their own land and borders and government. But in 1914, this was just one big country. Now, there are two movements going on within Austria-Hungary, but also involving Germany and Serbia. Germany was trying to lead a pan-Germanic movement, which was the movement to unify all peoples of German-speaking countries. At the time, a large chunk of Austria-Hungary spoke German, so pan-Germanism is the cause of the alliance between Germany and Austria-Hungary. On the other hand, there was a movement called Pan-Slavism, which had the goal of uniting all Slavic peoples. These Slavic peoples spoke various languages, but they were all still the same ethnicity. And all these languages are seen here. All these countries that are colored are Slavic countries, and they all have under the influence. They all speak basically similar languages, have similar ethnicities, and want to be. I think they should be one nation. So once again, Pan-Slavism is where these Slavic peoples spoke various languages, but they were still the same ethnicity, and they wanted to be together. We will learn in a few minutes that Austria-Hungary, which had a lot of Germans, would eventually declare war on Serbia, which had Slavic people. And Russia was roped into the war because it also had Slavic peoples, which is an example of Pan-Slavism. So, nationalism takes its form here in the Pan-Germanic movement and Pan-Slavism movement, but the movements are going to collide, causing a massive war. A modern example of this would be Kurdistan. Currently, there's an ethnicity called Kurds or Kurdish, and those people in the Middle East are spread among 3 different countries: Iraq, Iran, and Afghanistan. we have many immigrants here in America, but that's where their home is, in the Middle East. Often in the Middle East, they are discriminated against and persecuted within their own countries. So the Kurdish nation, which isn't actually an official country, it's just a group of people that have similar beliefs and ethnicities. The Kurdish nation desires to have their own territory and government, so they may live in more comfort and peace. So that's a modern example of our nationalism. Okay, back to our acronym. The I stands for imperialism, the term for when one country takes over another country economically and politically. You recently learned that America took over Hawaii and the Philippines economically and politically. And in the situation of World War I, though, imperialism was taking place in Europe. For example, European countries such as Britain, France, Belgium, all these countries right here, they had taken over many African countries during the 1800s. All African countries except for two, Ethiopia and Sierra Leone, were colonized by a European nation. These countries, though, these right here, these European countries, they were still land hungry. They wanted more territory. And as you can guess, in Europe, there was no new territory to take, no unclaimed territory to have. If one country wanted to gain land, then another country would have to lose land. And countries don't like to lose land, so this leads to wars. Before World War I, several skirmishes had occurred because Germany and France both had their imperial eyes on the same territories in Africa, mainly Morocco. Germany would push France's buttons by encroaching on France when they would encroach on Morocco when France already had a station there. Germany would try to get them to leave, and so that led to a lot of different skirmishes. The deterioration of another imperial called the Ottoman Empire attracted the attention of European powers who sought territory, influence, and access in the Balkans. And the Balkans are this area up here in Europe and in Europe. So a quick side note about the Ottoman Empire. The Ottoman Empire was once a great empire. It centered in present-day Turkey, and then it spread out into the Middle East and Northern Africa and Eastern Europe. This map is the 1600s. By the 1900s, though, it was much smaller than it had once been. It was actually just like this much. It was very small. It was at the risk of complete collapse, and other countries knew it. This desired territory, the Ottoman Empire, influence and access included Austria-Hungary, wanting to expand its borders east, Russia wanting access to the Black Sea, which is here, and Germany wanting to build a railway from Germany through Eastern Europe into Asia, all the way down into Baghdad. With all these desires, with Russia wanting this area right here, Germany wanting all this area right here, and then other countries wanting Eastern Europe, you're going to have clashes. You have desires overlapping. You have tensions and rivalries increasing, and that we're on the brink of release. Okay. For the final letter of our acronym, we have another A. And this A stands for assassination. As you probably already know, an assassination is the targeted killing of an important figure of any given country. Lincoln, MLK, Kennedy, etc. All important figures in America have been assassinated. This assassination will be of Archduke Franz Ferdinand. He was important to the country of Austria because he was the heir to the Austrian throne. Okay, let me tell you the story of a man named Archduke Franz Ferdinand. Archduke Franz Ferdinand traveled from his home in Vienna, Austria, to meet with some folks in Sarajevo, Bosnia. Now, both Austria and Bosnia were part of the Austrian-Hungarian kingdom, so it's not like he was traveling outside of his realm, but he was quite close to the edge. On the other side of the border from Bosnia was a country called Serbia. Serbia had the race of Slavic people, while Austria-Hungary had many Germanic people. Bosnia had many Slavic people, though, because it was right on the border between the two places. There was a well-hatched plan by a group of Serbian nationalists who call themselves the Black Hand. These Serbian nationalists thought that Bosnia should be a part of Serbia rather than Austria-Hungary because they had so many Slavs there. So, the Archduke arrived there and set up to go through a parade in Sarajevo, Bosnia. His parade route was publicly announced beforehand, which is something that would never happen now. If you can imagine Obama going to a parade and, people knowing exactly where he was going every time he came to town or every time he was in a parade. No, it's never like that. People never know anymore where to go because of these assassinations. So, anyway, these Black Hand Serbian nationalists were scattered throughout the parade route, and the Archduke was traveling in a car with the top open. The assignment for the Black Hand members was to shoot or throw a bomb if they got clear access. But here's the crazy thing that happens. Along the parade route, someone threw a small bomb in front of Archduke Franz Ferdinand's car, and it actually hurt someone in the car in front of them. But the parade continued anyway, with the top down on the car. Then eventually the parade ended, and Archduke Franz Ferdinand was still alive. He wanted to go visit the injured man in the hospital rather than get out of Bosnia because of security issues. So he goes to visit his friend in the hospital, and as he and his wife, Archduke Franz Ferdinand and his wife, are leaving the hospital, someone named Gavril Princip, he was a member of the Black Hand, seized his chance to fulfill the assassination mission. He hadn't been able to do it on the parade route, but now, again, the Archduke was right in front of him. So he takes his chance. He shoots both Archduke Franz Ferdinand and the Archduke's wife, killing both of them. He was immediately arrested and will probably never know how different the world will look because of his one action with that gun. He kicked off a chain of events that had no point of return. So with that assassination, we reach a culmination. It is mania. The militarism, the alliances, plus the nationalism, plus imperialism, plus assassination equals a point of no return. Austria blames Serbia for Archduke Franz Ferdinand's death and declares war on Serbia. This would be like if a Mexican nationalist thought Texas should be a part of Mexico again and assassinated our president or vice president. We would maybe then declare war on Mexico. So, once Austria-Hungary declares war on Serbia, Germany joins in. Germany pledges their support for Austria-Hungary, which is a mix of the causes of alliance and nationalism. The Pan-Germanic movement meant that all Germanic people should support one another. Since Austria-Hungary had many Germanic peoples, Germany backed it up. On the other end of the spectrum, Russia will join in. Russia pledges their support for Serbia, which is, again, a mix of alliances and nationalism. The Pan-Slavic movement that we talked about earlier, where all Slavic people support one another, is taking place here. Since Serbia had many Slavic people, like Russia, Russia backed up Serbia. Now, it starts to get even messier. Germany will declare war on Russia, and since France and Germany have been long-standing enemies, France pledges their support for Russia. Germany then says, oh, no, 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 and declare war on France. Now, pause here. Germany has a bit of a problem. Germany, at this point, is going to have to fight a two-front war. If you look at a map of Europe, you'll see that the western enemy of Germany is France, and their eastern enemy is Russia. But how will they fight both countries at the same time? The Germans come up with a plan called the Schlieffen Plan. In this Schlieffen Plan, Germany will quickly, within 6 weeks, capture Paris and defeat France. That's the plan, at least. Then, after they take France, then they'll put all their forces to the east to defeat Russia. Russia was going to be taking a while to mobilize, so Germany thought that if they went ahead and knocked out France, they'd have time to do that. The only problem was that France was ready for them. They were ready for the Germans. There were troops all up and down that border. Germany's plan then was to go through Belgium and get into France that way. However, Belgium was neutral and wanted no part in the war. Germany had forgotten or discounted the fact that Great Britain was a longtime supporter of Belgium. So when Germany invaded Belgium, Great Britain declared war on Germany. So all of this mess is going to lead to two teams of world powers fighting against each other. These two teams are as follows. The Allied powers are made up of Great Britain, France, and Russia. The Central powers are made up of Germany, Austria-Hungary, the Ottoman Empire, and Italy. It is good to note that these are not the only countries fighting, but these are the main ones, the great ones. Just remembering these will simplify the war so that you can understand it better. And in your assignment today, you will see the other countries that were involved. So now you have learned we have 5 causes of World War I. Really quickly. Militarism, alliances, nationalism, imperialism, assassination, mania are our causes. And then we have our alliances, which we saw in the slide before this. So, that is the end of my lecture for you. But I want you to now turn to the second page in your packet that you have. Looks like this. And what I want you to do on here is I want you to explain the causes of World War I in these boxes by drawing or writing. Drawing is probably going to be easier. That's what it's made for, but I know some of you hate to draw, so you can write if you'd like. But here's a disclaimer. If you write, you must have at least 25 words, and you can't just copy from the notes and think that's going to be enough. You have to have the notes and some examples. So, for example, like if you're going to draw from militarism, maybe militarism you could draw 2 countries. You know, one half of the box could be one country, another half of the box could be another country, and they're both adding guns or bombs to a big pile to show that they're getting their weapons ready for war. Then you have, for alliances, you could have like different flags drawn with different little stick people in front of them, shaking hands, showing that they have each other's backs, you know, friends, whatever. Imperialism, you could draw a big thing of land, and then that piece of land looking at another piece of land like, ooh, I want it. The nationalism is the pride in your country, the driving pride. So you could have the flag with a celebration, like party stuff going on. I don't know. You can be creative, but illustrate it somehow. If you want to write, my idea was that, for example, for militarism, you paraphrase your notes. There's one sentence in your notes about what militarism is, and then give 1 to 2 examples. So you can say militarism is the building up of soldiers and weapons and such and preparing for war. For example, Germany put so much percentage of their defense into so much percentage of their country's money into defense, while other countries put so much percentage of their money into defense. That could be the examples. So 1 sentence and then example for each one if you want to write. Okay, the last thing you need to do is you have a map. On the map, it tells you that you need to label the countries. Your map is blank, so you need to label all these countries that I put onto your map. Put those names onto your map. And then you need to get 3 markers. We can use the highlighters that I have in the room. You need yellow and pink and green. And you're going to color, I think it's written on the paper. It tells you on the paper that for the Central Powers, I've given you a list of the Central Powers on that paper. You need to color in those countries on that list in all the same color. And then the Allied Powers, you color in another color. And then the Neutral Powers, you color in another color. And it tells you on the paper specifically what color you need to color them. But by the end, it should show you that these countries through here are all one color. They're all fighting with each other. But these countries, Russia, France, etc., are fighting together as well. And that'll illustrate for you that Germany has its enemy on both sides of it. Anyway, you should be able to see the alliance systems in color by the time you finish with this, and also learn some locations of where your countries are. So once you're done with your notes and your drawing and then this map, you're finished for the day, and the next lesson will get into more of the kind of fighting that took place. Actually very interesting. In World War I, they fought in trenches, and we'll learn about what life was like in the trenches later. Anywho, give me this stuff and have a wonderful day, and I hope you learned something. Bye-bye.